Europe basically said, nope, Google, you're going to pay. And on a Irish tax issue, Apple was forced to pay as well. Dan, is this just the EU trying to regulate itself and be the most innovative regulatory beast out there, or are these just big companies acting poorly?
Yeah, I love this stuff. Hey, listen, so this was an interesting week just because Apple had its event. Apple had, was getting a lot of attention, and then Apple got strapped with a, 13 or so $billion tax bill. Company has been fighting on the onus that it had paid taxes in the U.S., so it shouldn't have to pay taxes. And this came back to me, and I did some kind of second tier TV about this. But I was talking about how, like, one is you really can't avoid paying taxes anywhere. So, tax efficiency is the strategy of every company. They take advantage of every loophole, and companies like Apple have more lawyers than ever necessary, more lawyers and accountants than ever necessary to figure out ways to pay less tax in different regions. Like Ireland's often been a market that has been particularly ripe for avoiding or delaying or deferring taxes. There was a period where under Donald Trump, you were able to bring, repatriate dollars to the U.S. at a lower penalty or lower cost, which a lot of companies took advantage of. And now what's happening is Europe is coming home to roost on the fact that maybe you did or didn't pay a fair share of tax over in Europe. Pat, I'm always one of those people that if the law is written a certain way, I admire companies for finding a way to be as efficient as possible. But if their taxes are due, the taxes are due. I'm sure they're going to try to find a way to kick this can down the road for another 10 years, before they'll actually have to pay it. Because the fundamental belief of these companies is they'll do more with a dollar than the government will, which I don't think I could disagree with in any circumstance. They also could then use this money to do some absorbent buyback. If anyone's ever checked the chart of Apple buybacks, it's remarkable. So that's kind of the situation on Apple. I mean, EU, I say this every time, Pat, that we end up in talking on this topic. Their innovation is stagnant. The economy is not growing. Their best companies tend to leave. And that's because it's just not a great place to build a company. Its entire focus is on, they've got this privacy focus, but this privacy focus is more about data control. The data control practice is all about giving strong abilities for these companies to find the DMA, to be able to charge tax and find these companies and speed bumps and tolls for existing. Companies like Spotify and others that have been successful in Europe, they leave Europe. They want to redomicile because it's not a great place to build companies, and that's unfortunate. But this isn't like unique. I mean, Google also got hit with a $2.5 billion fine for search. They've had over $8 billion in fines over the last 5 years or so. One was related to search, one was related to shopping. And the entire thing with Google, similarly to the Apple thing, is just they're looking at fundraising activities. So there's very little GDP growth. There's very little startup, few unicorns. They don't seem to exist there. So the way that Vestager historically and EU competition and leadership in this particular area make money is they find companies. Does that mean that I genuinely believe these companies do no wrong? Absolutely not. I'm not suggesting by any means that these companies do not take advantage of their technology to give themselves preference or misuse data. I'm just saying that there is a conflicted policy set in Europe that continues to make doing business there not particularly lucrative for big tech companies and startups. You're seeing features not being rolled out in that market frequently by companies. And eventually, if it gets too strict, they may just not roll features or come to these markets at all. So, Pat, it's been a revolving door. It's been Google, it's been Microsoft, it's been Qualcomm, it's been Intel, it's been Apple, it's been Amazon. It is a merry-go-round of 10-figure plus fines in Europe. What I'm not seeing, though, right now, or I'm at least not understanding right now, is what is their plan to actually stimulate and create enthusiasm and excitement for tech to participate, to grow, to invest, both at the startup end, and then, of course, for big tech. It's getting kind of murky over there.
Yeah, it's hard for me to peanut butter any of this stuff going on there, because some of these I totally get. I mean, statistically speaking, Google has a monopoly in the digital advertising market. And not only do they have the, DoubleClick is probably the biggest weapon. And by the way, they bought DoubleClick when I was at Alta Vista, like the best acquisition that was made here. And this is before most advertising was digital. So technically they do have a monopoly. And I don't even think it's the fines that make any difference at all. I mean, Google has wrapped up $8.25 billion dollars in fines, but that doesn't mean anything. Sorry, 8.25 billion euros over the last decade. It means nothing to these companies.
Speed bump.
Unless they have to charge. I think with Apple, they have $48 billion left of cash. Okay, that they can't buy any big companies. They can't overinvest in markets here. So all they can do is share buybacks. So that they're in this weird conundrum. But only if you make them change something is it going to hurt. So for instance, Apple having to allow third-party app ecosystems into their store, that is going to be difficult for Apple. And we've seen Apple try to not do what it's been asked to do multiple times. And I'm sorry, I am not buying the security thing. I think Apple is acting, quite frankly, like a little baby who was told it can't play with this toy, and it's going to sit in the corner, it's going to scream, it's going to gnaw, and it's going to gnash. But you can sideload on Android. You have adults. You can do that. I think the Android not being secure is a non-issue at this point. I keep waiting for the cataclysmic event that Apple keeps talking about with Android, and who knows, maybe in 10 years it might. But I just think it's an excuse. And when it comes to a lot of these big companies, they just want to be the biggest monopolist out there.